No.
There you go.
Got it.
All right, can I
So,
start reading now?
yeah.
All right. Every state is a community of some kind, and every community is established with a view to some good. For mankind always acts, for mankind always act in order to obtain that which they think good. But if all communities aim at some good, the state or political community, which is the highest of all and which embraces all the rest, aims at good in a greater degree than any other and at the highest good. Okay? Some people think that the qualifications of a
Maybe
statement
we should, maybe that's a small enough, a big enough chunk.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
It seems like a lot.
I mean, the first thing I would go at is the state or political community, which is the highest of all. That seems to be the most striking claim there. Otherwise, I think we have agreements around the basic structure of how things are ordered.
Does the highest of all refer to, how can I say it, like for example, if there's a hierarchy, you'd have like a nation, then you'd have like smaller communities under nations. Is that what they mean when they say highest of all? Like,
I
I'm not
think
quite
so.
sure.
Highest of all communities is what he's talking about. So every state is a community of some kind. Every
Yeah.
community is established with a view to some good. So the highest of all communities, it seems, he's saying, is the state or the political community. Um, so I guess what struck me about that is the political body, like the social body, is that the highest example of a community, or
Does he mean that politics is an end in itself, or community? Sorry, more appropriately. Is that? I think it's just. That's how I'm understanding that.
Yeah, clearly it's good that we stopped.
Lots of questions here, guys. I'm just trying to, I should have done this earlier. I'm pulling up the Greek here. You guys have highest. I don't have highest in my translation. I have most authoritative.
Hmm.
There's the
Mine
most
is
there's the most authoritative community and the most authoritative good.
Hmm.
Do you guys have highest community and highest good there?
Highest
yeah.
good, yeah.
I
So-
have best. Sorry,
Okay.
it is about the same as highest, but anyway.
I'm guessing it's probably, let's see if this will get me to the beginning. Sorry, guys, I'm going to try avoid putting on reading glasses since this is being recorded.
The pressure is real. And I'm out here wiping my nose.
Yeah.
Not cocaine, I promise. No cocaine, I just have the flu.
The potential other.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is highest like the way a mayor has is higher than a person who runs a household, but both have like a similar, you know what I'm saying? Like household's a community, but a town's a bigger community. And obviously, province is bigger than a town.
Yeah.
The Greek word here is kuriotaton, kuriotatos, which means something like most authoritative. It's like it's a superlative, so it's the most
Yeah.
of something. and it's the most authoritative or most powerful.
Hmm.
I'm not actually, this isn't a word I'm used to seeing a lot.
So I mean, I think in the background is that sense that it hasn't come out yet, but that man is a political or social animal. And then this claim that it's the political community that is the highest or the most authoritative community. And whatever that community is set over is then also the highest or the most authoritative. So I guess why that provoked me was because I maybe I would want to say man himself is perhaps a kind of community, and maybe he should be the most authoritative or um, the highest. So why is it his political belonging or his political community? That's what prompted the question, at least.
Yeah, maybe and maybe maybe even this was reading too much. I mean that first line. What was your first line?
Every state is a community of some kind, and every community is established with a view to some good.
Okay, yeah, that's already a lot, right?
Uh,
So state is probably just polis here, which really just means city. For them, yeah, it's polis. For them, it's just a state is not like a nation state. He's really thinking of a city. He's thinking of a city state like Athens. And every state is some sort of community, and every community is constituted for the sake of some good. That's already it's already a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. Every community is for the sake of some good. Community is just koinonia. Everything's always over translated, right? So it does mean community or association or partnership, but it's just uh, like biblical Greek is known as Koinic Greek, which means like the commoners Greek, the Greek of the common Greek. But just everything in common is for the sake of some good. The city is some sort of commonness, and every commonness is for the sake of some good.
Okay.
somehow it's more confusing.
I think it's
That
more
makes
confusing.
it sound like when you say it like that, it makes it sound like it makes it sound like every time people come together, it's for the sake of some good.
Yeah.
Why people? Why throw in people there?
What do you mean?
So this is why everything's over translated. Aristotle's like a babbler, really. The better I get at Greek, which is I still got a long way to go, the more I realize like this, he's talking like a kid. You know, he's just saying, he's not saying when we say community, we think immediately, oh, he's talking about a community of people. And if this is the politics, and a city is obviously a polis is a community of people. But he's just saying what's the most basic word for every collection, maybe? Every
Yeah.
collection is for the sake of some good.
Every two or more is a state, or
And in common. Every two or more together. Something like that. Yeah.
and if we reverse that
Almost.
sense of go for it, Tom.
No, I was going to say it's sorry. It's any kind of relationship. You know, if you have two people, or any relationship,
to things, to
Hmm.
anything.
Okay, so it's at least a multiplicity, and there also seems to have to be a relationship.
Mm.
So those both seem to be significant.
And then they have to be for the same thing, which I guess if you're already a group, I don't even know what words to use anymore. If you already are like a group of things, there must be something that is making you a group of those things. This is
Okay,
crazy.
so there's something
Even-
about that group. A group is more than just a multiplicity. There's something else there.
Mm.
It's yeah.
Right.
There's
Go ahead, Daniel.
I'm just gonna say there seems to be at least three involved. That two or more are in relationship, and then there's the good.
Okay, but that there must be a good is something that maybe we should think about the justification for. So I want us
Yes.
to think about that two or more. It's not just that they're two or more. There's something loaded about that relationship aspect that Thomas brought up. Like the two or more, maybe I'm being obtuse here. The two or more have to form some sort of a unity. That's what the community is. It's not just any two or more. It's any two or more that are somehow bound together.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I mean every state. So to even be a state,
Well, it
to
may
to
be,
even be a state,
yeah,
yeah.
maybe
Seems
even to be a
to
community,
be any. Yeah.
to be any multiplicity that is bound together into a community, you have to
Every
be
unit.
constituted somehow for the sake of some good. Right. This is
Yeah.
something we've talked about, at least the four of us have talked about together many times. In Aristotle, a unity is connected to the end that the parts of the unity serve. Right. What makes the part, and it goes all the way down to down to the bottom. A shoe has parts, and the parts form some sort of community. It sounds silly, but the koinonia, or whatever the Greek word is doesn't sound as silly to say that the parts of the shoe are like a unified collection. And what it is that unifies them is some good that they together are serving, whatever the good of the shoe is. A polis, a city state, a state is a unified collection. And because a unified collection is always for the sake of some good, the city must be for the sake of some good. Okay, that's the first sentence. How do we get to the most authoritative or highest good?
Yeah.
Would it
So,
would it be then the good that all the other goods serve? Some good, the state or political community, which is the highest of all, and which embraces all the rest. Yeah, this is the thing that makes me think that these small ones, and then there's this one where all these goods. Am I making any sense here? These smaller goods work for the function of this greater good. except I don't know how that would look like in the scheme of well, we're no longer just talking about a city. No?
Yeah, it could do it with anything.
That's the issue.
The shoes and the pants and the jacket, each one of them is a collection, a unified collection on its own. And together, they're a unified collection in that they're this nice outfit. And if that's the case, Thomas, you said before we started, you thought this reminded you of the beginning of the Nicomachean ethics. If it's the case that each one of those things is already a collection, and all of them together is a collection of the collections, the collection of the collections must serve some good, which means the goods of each of the collected things fit together for the good of the whole.
Is that our account for why it would be higher or more authoritative? Because more fits into it.
Yeah.
In one sense, you might.
Does it work? Is the question. That's the account.
You could say
does it work?
It seems to be. Then it would be saying something like a determining. There's a kind of determining relationship between the higher or more encompassing good and the lower good. Does that make? Am I making sense?
Yeah, it's authoritative. So what is that? In what way is it authoritative? How do we understand that authority?
Yeah. The one that's given here straight after the highest is that it embraces all the rest. So all the other communities and
I'm thinking if all the rest if all the rest function to serve the highest good, then that highest good doesn't that highest good determine all the rest of the other goods? In other words, because the highest good is like this, then all these lower goods, which have to come together to make the highest good, have to be like this in order to get to this. Am I making sense?
Can you
yeah.
Can you fill it out with my stupid example of the clothes?
Well, if for example the highest good is I need to be warm, it's going to determine how each item of clothing serves its good, right? If I don't know if I'm making, but basically it determines the good of the clothes you wear because warmth is basically the objective it's trying to get to. So it won't make sense to wear, I don't know, sandals or something like that. So it would seem it dictates to the smaller one, and because it dictates to the smaller goods, it seems to have more authority over them.
Yeah, so the purpose of the outfit as a whole dictates the purpose of the parts of the outfit in the outfit. So the sandals are not going to be, the sandals won't be good enough for my outfit if my outfit is supposed to be keeping me warm. Yeah, I think that's exactly what he has in mind. The authority is that the highest good that the whole collection serves dictates the good of the collections within the collection. So, Daniel, I think you're right. The smallest collection is the individual. The individual is part of, I don't know, what's the next collection? Probably a family. And somehow
friendship.
The good could be friendship, yeah. Could be father and son or brothers or two friends or and then the good of actually I'm not sure friendship is going to work. maybe let's leave that aside for now. We'll come back to it to make things more problematic once we have the general idea. But the person is in a family, and the family is somehow the good of the family is superior to the good of the person. That's a little bit weird, actually, when you think about it. But that seems to follow here. If the family is a collection and the individual is a member of that collection, then the good of the family, you can tell I've been watching The Sopranos now, the good of the family is superior to the good of the individual. Because it dictates the good, it dictates what makes an individual good. And if the family is somehow in I don't know what the next one is. It probably depends on what sort of state we're living in.
Neighborhood.
Neighborhood, or in ancient Athens, it was probably something like a tribe within the city of Athens. There were different people belonged to different different kind of tribes or different extended families of some sort. And then the good of the particular family is subordinate to good of the and so on and so forth. And if you can get to an end that includes all of them, a final collection that they all belong to, of which there is none larger, the end of that collection is going to be the most authoritative collection. So, I mean, that's great. It's interesting, makes sense.
Mm.
But what about Daniel's point from earlier that really the individual is the most important? The only reason we want to be in a state is because man is a social animal, and we want to complete ourselves. That in some ways that's the kind of modern view. It's more individualistic. It's really about the person, and the state is for the sake of the happiness of the person. And in some ways, I think, how much can Aristotle disagree with that? A state in which all of the people are unhappy, that doesn't seem ideal.
Would he not say something like that would be impossible? Because if you have a happy family, presumably everyone's happy.
Presumably.
Well, there's this collection here, the family, and the family is happy in Aristotle's strange use of the term happy, which means the family is thriving. But again, I've been watching The Sopranos. The family can thrive as a family, and all of the members could be unhappy.
The Sopranos probably would be a good example of that.
Seems like it.
Yeah, I don't know, I've got a problem with that picture.
Yeah, you should. I think you should.
I'm under the impression that the family is only able to become a family because of the individuals, right? I don't know, maybe I'm thinking about it as non-human parts too much, but the family is only capable of becoming a family because of the individuals. So doesn't, can I put this? The well-being, I don't see how that they can be well-being in the family without they being well-being in the individual, in the individuals. It's I don't see how they can be broken parts, but the whole can be working. Is what I'm saying. I don't understand how that works, unless there's something inherently wrong with the whole.
You can't be healthy if your hand is broken.
Yeah, there seems to just be something weird about a whole a whole being happy, while the individuals that make up the whole aren't happy. Unless, of course, happiness to the whole and happiness to the individual are so different that it's possible.
Yeah. Is it possible? I'm trying to give the two extremes here, but I'm not sure I know how to do it that well. Is it possible for the whole to be happy or to achieve its good while none of the parts are achieving their good, or very few of the parts are achieving their good? It doesn't seem like it. Maybe it is. And then on the other extreme, are any of the parts able to achieve their own individual good completely separately from the whole?
Yeah.
I'll put that second one another way, because I think you're all agreeing with the first one, that if the whole is functioning well, all of the parts have to somehow be functioning. If the whole is achieving its good, I threw in function there. Shouldn't have done that. If the whole is achieving its good, then all of the parts of the whole have to be achieving their goods, because their goods are determined by the goods of the whole. Okay. On the other hand, there's this, I'll just steal Plato's example because it's hard to come up with one, especially on the fly, and Plato's examples are usually good. In the Republic, he imagines a statue and making the statue as beautiful as possible, and making the parts of the statue as beautiful as possible. And then he thinks about the most beautiful part of the statue. Well, what's the most beautiful part of the statue? It's the eyes. And what's the most beautiful thing you could do for the eyes? Well, the most beautiful color is purple. So if you want to make the eyes as beautiful as possible, you paint them purple. But if you paint the eyes purple, what's that going to do to the whole? It's going to disrupt the collection.
Mm.
You see what's going on here? And what Socrates says about that, what he's using that point to illustrate, is that we're not concerned about the good of any single part. We're concerned about the good of the whole. If you get too concerned about the good of a particular part of the state and you strive to make that part as happy as possible, you're going to destroy the happiness of the whole. Right? Are people with me here? But the good of the part has to be kept subordinate to the good of the whole. Okay, that's fine. And then Socrates throws in this other little claim that is easy to pass over because it's not really part of the argument. It doesn't immediately strike one as obviously part of the argument. He says, well, and also, we shouldn't be surprised if people are actually happiest when they are in the state.
We shouldn't be surprised when they are actually happiest.
Right.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be surprised if the eye is actually most beautiful when it's not painted purple, but it's painted appropriate. It's painted an appropriate color to be a part of the statue.
Yeah.
That's a big claim and a big assumption. But we've really already stated that assumption earlier to some degree. Man is intrinsically a social animal. Somehow a part of our nature is to be a part of these communities.
Yeah. I have two things on my mind. The one is where we were starting with every state and the sense that even being a state, so even the state of together, like the state of being a state, is somehow dependent on speak in a circle. on the good. Maybe I'll come back to this point. The other was the naturally occurring image that came to us before we started recording, which was in some sense, the beggar, and then developing that into, say, the holy beggar. This function of being at odds in terms of the way that the state is distributing or exchanging value. So the value that you are able to give to the state through your work or through your job, and then the monetary payoff of that's given by the communities within the state or from the state itself. And then we were considering another individual, say the one who is contributing, but contributing in a way that's not being recognized by the way that the state is distributing value. So then we were using the words like a holy beggar.
Yeah. I just want to, I think we must be, I think this is a reasonably obvious point, though, is just to be aware the word state, I think, well, I tend to think of it in modern terms. It's the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. I think the idea of state here is a little bit more like almost, I can't think of a word like culture or the way in which people think about these things. I don't know how to put the sort of
how about collective?
The collective, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the word he's using. It's a collection.
Yeah.
And with Larry's babbling Aristotle, that's how it begins. Every state collect, yeah. With what Larry just said before I started speaking here, it's then some kind of an account for the social function of begging, of, say, and just suggesting, say, the highest amongst us, the most ordered, that appeared in this parasitic way, that in this context of, we don't paint the eye of the statue purple, because that's going to disrupt the proportion of the whole statue. So we degrade the good of a part of the statue so that the whole can benefit. And that's the claim that was sitting slightly uncomfortable with us, that in some way we prefer the benefit of the whole, and that determines the degree to which each part can pursue its own good.
Right. Don't let me put words in your mouth here, Daniel. I'm going to try to change this question. I'm going to try to reformulate what I think is your question here, but don't let me move it into something else. But if we start from the following question, we might get to the same place. What is the good of the whole? What's the good of the state? Well, what's a state? Like, if it's not the case that the whole point of the state, what makes a good state good, is that it allows all of the people in it to flourish, then what makes a state good? And if the point of the state is that it allows the people in it to flourish, then isn't the lowest collection the most important, not the highest collection? Aren't the individuals that make up the state the highest good, and not the state itself? Ask not what you can do for your country, but what your country can do for you. I mean, that there does seem to be some sense to that. I mean, a polis, a city, is just a place for people to live.
And if you're unhappy, you should leave, or you could leave. You have a right, in some sense, to leave.
Well, okay.
If you're unhappy, it's not working well. That's what it sounds like.
Is that the case? Well, what would it mean, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask. And this is a question that I don't think we can answer yet. I think it's a question that Aristotle, will call him the great babbler, has led us to. or wants us to ask, what makes a state good? So now we've got this highest collection. The good of the highest collection is the most important. Well, what is it? It can't simply be to make all the members of the state happy, and yet that seems like exactly what it is.
I keep thinking of Machiavelli, Larry, when you say what's the function of the state. He apparently, he thinks that this function of the state is the acquisition of power, and it doesn't really matter if the lower order parts are happy or are behaving justly. I think it's interesting. I'm assuming Aristotle's going to disagree with that.
Well, I mean, yeah, he is. Well, that's the short answer. Aristotle is going to disagree with that. He thinks we can give a better answer than that. That Machiavelli's account is painting the eyes purple from Aristotle's perspective.
That
Question.
question was expressed far better than I could have, and I glimpsed the situation for a moment, and then it got a bit unclear, and I think it's what I was stumbling toward in the first piece that I said. So, I mean, today we have this liberal democracy, and that's the sense of the state and the individuals in the state pursuing their happiness, or the state is good because it can embrace all the individuals in it, and the individuals themselves are pursuing their desires or their goods, and that's kind of how we make the assessment. It's like, can the individual do what's good for themselves, and if they can do that, then somehow the democracy or the state is functioning well, or you can say it's good. So there's this back and forth that we're kind of being pressed into, but it is open, or we haven't arrived at that. The question, I mean, the way I'm thinking about it now, which question do we ask first? If we say what's the good of the individual, and then we ask what type of a thing he is, and he's a thing that exists within a state, then what is the state, and what is the good of the state? Is it the good of the individual, or is it
Try the example of the outfit again, and the parts of the clothing. Just imagine you would ask somebody what the purpose of that outfit is, and instead of saying to keep me warm, they said to make my shoes as good as possible. But wait a minute, your shoes are good in relation to the outfit. Like, there has to be some good that the outfit is for the sake of, that allows it to dictate the good of the shoes. There has to be something that the state is for the sake of. It may turn out, this is a spoiler alert here, it may turn out it's already starting to seem like, we've all read the Nicomachean Ethics, right? I think.
I got about halfway.
Okay. Well, the first chapter of the first book is all you need here. So the good of all the parts is, the good of each of the parts is determined by its place in the whole, but the whole, being a collection and not just a bunch of parts, requires that the whole has some end that it is for the sake of. And now we're going to have to find that end. We're going to have to identify that end.
Yeah.
If the structure is going to work, it can't just be, the end can't just turn around and be for the sake of the happiness of the parts. the state having an end does seem like, from what we've been saying, to be good for all the parts, because it allows each of the parts to have an end, that each of the parts can order itself around. It needs to be something.
Yeah.
So the question that comes to mind from these questions, and it's been bugging me, I guess, question that's been bugging me for years now, whenever we get to this kind of point, is so then that good, is the good something that's there, and it influences us? Is it there like by itself and influences us, or do we decide a good and then that influences us? Am I making sense? Like, because with the outfit, I want to get warm, so I dress warmly, right? Or I could say in another scenario, I'm dressing warm because it's cold outside. That wasn't determined by me. You know what I'm saying? So my issue now is, if we're talking about, let's use the cities as an example again. If we're talking about the cities, once they choose the type of city, like once they choose what they value in that city, it will affect uh, how the city is ordered. But that's different from like what I choose to order myself around is different from, say, if there's something that I'm supposed to order myself around, and it's not a matter of my choice. That's just what I'm supposed to order myself around. Am I making sense with those questions? That's been the troubling thing in my head. You know, how do I know that it's not just something I chose, and that's the thing I'm actually supposed to order myself around?
Yeah, let me, I'll risk doing to you what I risk doing to Daniel, and changing your question here. Can you choose the wrong end?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question. How would you know if you've chosen the wrong end? That's Machiavelli's view. The ruler just chooses an end.
Mm.
And it becomes just his ability to choose his own end. But that doesn't seem to be Aristotle's view. What
From
would
what
make
we, yeah,
and we
no, just
and
from,
go
go
ahead,
for it.
Daniel. Go ahead, Daniel.
Just, just from what we've read, it's this embraces all the rest. So all the rest of the goods. That's our sense of the good at the moment.
Mm.
Yeah. There may be a lot of content that we can put into that. I'm resisting doing that right now. Because we just read a couple of sentences here, and probably I'm going to need to stop in a couple of minutes here. But yeah, there may be something about the end of the whole that is dictated by the fact that it is a collection of the parts, and to be a collection of the parts, you have to take care of those parts. If you choose an end for the whole that destroys the parts, you've made yourself into a thing that is not going to be lasting. It's going to be self-destructive in a very fundamental sense.
Mm.
But in that sense, it's not even a thing, really.
Sorry, Sipa?
I'm saying in that sense, if it's self-destructive, if it's destroying the parts that make up the thing, then it's not really a thing.
Or it's a
It's
thing
not.
that's very temporary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's not something we get to choose, how long-lasting the end that we choose is. It's just in the nature of the end. And probably we want to choose the end that is long-lasting.
Yeah.
The most long-lasting end.
So long as that long-lasting end isn't horrible.
Well, that's a rather than like how long, like Sipol, that's it seems like it's a beginning to this question that's been bugging you, you know? Is that some ends you can choose the end, you can choose wrong. You can't choose how long it lasts, say, or how long the way that the end to choose then relates to the order that it gives in terms of making it not a thing anymore, not something. So then there's the sense of there's some kind of standard there.
Hmm.
I choose the thing that doesn't end, or
Shit, it's kind of got me thinking of the Timaeus, and, how we described the good when we were reading the Timaeus. Can't remember whether it was the good or the true, one or the two. I can't remember, but it seems to have that element of the one that is more. Let's say it. One that is more lasting is the one that is more lasting is the one that's more itself. Can't remember now how it was phrased, but essentially there was a relation between being good and duration of lasting. If I'm making sense. If I'm remembering it correctly, first and foremost.
You might, Sipo, you might think a little bit more about the Nicomachean Ethics and about Plato's Gorgias.
Yeah.
So in the Gorgias, Plato takes up the question, in some sense, he's taking up the question for a human being. And he's comparing two ends, pleasure and inquiry. And it's the discussion of pleasure that's kind of interesting for us here. Callicles is the most emphatic proponent of pleasure as an end. And we see through really the most emphatic example is the scratching of an itch example. That pleasure as an end is intrinsically disordering or disunifying of the collective. And so if you choose an end based on something like pleasure, you're going to be choosing an end that is destructive to the whole. Which, again, it just leaves open the question, well, what's the end that isn't destructive to the whole? Not destructive to the whole and somehow allows for, although this is not its direct purpose, it allows for the flourishing of the parts.
Which ironically seems to be more pleasure. It seems to be a more truer form of pleasure than the form of pleasure that destroys the parts that feel the pleasure.
Okay.
Ironic.
Maybe. Happiness would be the flourishing of a thing.
Yeah.
Oh, all right, fellas, we have far exceeded our hour and a half for today.
All right.
yes, yeah,
That's bound.
Okay.
yeah.
Does this time work for everybody?
It's perfect.
Yeah, it works perfectly.
Yeah.
Perfectly.
Cool.
Yeah, let me
All right.
hit stop.
Hit the road.